Louise, hello.
Mike.
Hello. We've done it.
We have. We've survived, mostly.
We've survived. We've
Look
seen...
at our eyes.
Yeah, I
Holes in
know.
the snow.
We've seen all the movies, good and bad and hideously ugly.
We have. We did
Um,
it.
Let me just start off by saying, because I think I keep meaning to bring this up in the previous videos, but I am actually impressed with how smoothly this festival has gone for the first time. It's been, the first time these guys have hosted it virtually, and the streaming platforms that have been used, and everything has kind of gone down a treat in that regard, haven't they? Yeah.
It was so easy. So easy. Clicking that link to say that you wanted to book that film and adding that to the pass, and then it just being like live broadcast ready, and then knowing that if you clicked on it, then you would have like another 3 minutes once it was loading to make another cup of tea or make another gin and tonic or grab some snacks. And it just worked. It was lovely. Genuinely, it just worked. It's one of those horrible Apple taglines, but absolutely. And it also just makes it so much easier when you're like, oh gosh, I know someone like Jamie Graham was like, oh God, I'm a technophobe. What if it doesn't work? And he was like, I made it work. I was like, of course you did, because it's really easy. It's actually easy.
And let me tell you, if Jamie Graham can do it, anyone can, because he really is bad with tech. So there you go. I've loved it. It's been so easy and smooth sailing. And actually, I mean, as much as this is against the rules, it's been so much fun to have my phone on me throughout all these films and been chatting to you, been chatting to other people, everyone talking about what they've liked, what they've not liked, and that's been actually really fun. It's kind of still felt like I've been amongst people all weekend, which has been really good.
Yeah, the community element of it's really good. And I think the fact that you couldn't pause it or you couldn't skip it or you couldn't rewind it added that extra sense of immediacy to it, which was really necessary, especially when you're watching quite thrilling films and wanting to, I think we've sent each other more messages in caps than I think we've ever sent. It's just like, OMG, what is happening? Something just exploded.
There's been a lot of, especially today actually, there's been a lot of just, oh no, oh God, what's this? What's happening now? Oh fuck,
Why is this happening?
Why is this happening? Yeah. So maybe we'll finish with a little roundup of our favourites across the whole festival. But first of all, let's talk a little bit about day 4, about yesterday, and some of the highlights from that final day of the festival. So generally speaking, would you say it was a good day, that final day?
It was a good day. It was a very good day.
It was,
it had some excellent things in it. And I think I've got a real lovely, one of them was a real lovely surprise for me, but we should probably go through them in order, shouldn't we?
Yeah, let's go through them in order. So we'll begin with the first film, and they'll probably get more positive actually as they go on, won't they? So we're going to start with Enhanced, which was, and Fright Fest always has this occasionally, kind of more of a sort of sci-fi, high concept, kind of almost fantasy, sort of superhero-y sort of story, right? This was the UK premiere of this film, and it is essentially very similar. If those people who saw Freaks at Glasgow Fright Fest a couple of years ago, it's very similar to Freaks, I guess. X-Men in a way. This idea of people who are
mutancy.
New mutants. This idea of there are people in the world who are enhanced. There are people who kind of mutants have special powers, and then there are these kind of baddies who are hunting them down essentially, and that's kind of the basic gist, isn't it? Looked quite nice, didn't it? Quite glossy, quite high production, quite high production values. What did you think of it generally?
I think the first thing to say that if you don't really want to watch this and you do want to watch Freaks, it is now on Netflix. That's an important note. So if you do want to watch that,
Freaks is wonderful.
Freaks is wonderful. Freaks is a great movie. I really wanted to like Enhanced because it was ticking all my boxes. It's got people with powers. It's got people punching people. It has secret government agencies doing terrible things with people with powers. Which has obviously got all of its socio-allegorical bits. But it just didn't land really with me. I felt like I was waiting for it to get exciting.
I know.
And it never really did. There was the main girl was cool, but it was the very idea that the kind of powers that they had, they had this like blue glow in them. And we got a little bit of exposition about why this science was there, but they got this blue glow and it meant that they could punch really hard, and every so often they could do a pulse, and the pulse would then propel people away from them between the times they were punching them. And I wish I liked it more. I just felt like it was episode 8 of a mediocre sci-fi TV series.
It absolutely, you're on the money with that. It looked like an episode of a sci-fi channel TV show, didn't it? And that's fine. And a lot of people are quite into that
Totally.
kind of stuff. And actually, even
Absolutely.
some of the people I was texting, like Becky Dark, friend of the pod, really enjoyed it. A lot of people really liked it. So
Yeah.
I think this has sort of divided people. It's certainly not terrible. It's just a bit ordinary, isn't it? I think it's just a bit like 100 other things we've seen before, and maybe we've seen done better in a lot of ways. A bit generic, I guess, is the problem.
I also felt like the two guys in it who were playing like the government agents.
The two white bearded guys.
The two white bearded guys. They looked like, you know, when you're playing like an RPG and you just play with the sliders a little bit, they looked like that. They looked like slightly slid versions of each other. So it was just like, oh, I'd be this wholesome guy or be this one. And it's like, they're both quite dull. Quite
dull. I know. It was a shame. So a bit of a lukewarm start to the day there. But then let's go into the next film, which was The Hunt. The Hunt. All weekend I've been calling it AV The Hunt.
We both have.
I think a lot of people have been calling it AV The Hunt. It's actually The Hunt, a Turkish film. And it was described as revenge meets Midnight Express, a fast-paced, hard-boiled, grisly honor killer thriller. Now, an honor killer thriller is a very strange, very specific kind of subgenre, isn't it? I suppose. Essentially, what we've got here is this, is the story of this honor killing and this woman who is being targeted by a bunch of men for something that happens at the beginning of the film. And then it is just a chase, isn't it? Essentially, it is her evading and escaping these people who are trying to kill her. Yeah. Louise, what did you think of The Hunt?
I think the comparisons with Revenge are really, really accurate.
Spot on. Yeah.
I think to start with, I wasn't quite sure what I was watching, but it just became this brilliant, relentless, tense chase as she was thrown into this. She was, it won't spoil anything because hopefully it comes to streaming services and stuff soon because it's really good. Maybe it gets on Shudder like Revenge because her heading out into the wilderness being hunted by these guys with guns is truly thrilling. And
so good,
beautiful, and I loved the color palette of it. She had an amazing. Her performance was tremendous,
wonderful.
And you constantly felt like she was. And I think the interesting thing is, I think it was the director, one of the producers, that was announcing it before the movie.
Yeah.
And he said that it's taken 10 years for them to make this movie, and it's not an easy subject matter to discuss. And that is not, honor killing is not an easy subject matter to discuss, whether you're in Turkey or not. And I think it's something that is not discussed. It's something that is hidden quite happily away. We know that horrible things do happen in this world. And I think, again, the horror genre providing itself a safe space to explore the idea of it, but then turn it on its head and give the woman strength to fight back her attackers.
It just nailed it tonally, didn't it? Because like you say, that's a real combination of tricky elements there to balance, that kind of real dark subject matter that is very real and is quite sensitive topic, and turning that into a genre film could be in some ways risky. But I think because the performances were so good, because the characters were so good, because it was written so well, and because you felt like the whole film, its heart was in the right place and it knew what it was doing. It was constantly just such a thrill ride, wasn't it? It was wonderful. I loved it as well. Genuinely tense, probably one of the most tense films of the weekend, I would say, like proper sort of cat and mouse chase suspense, right? That we haven't really had. It was the film that we kind of hoped Blind would be, right? That kind of cat and mouse chase thriller. And this was it. This was so good, so interesting, so exciting.
Properly edge of seat stuff as well. There were a few things that happened in it where things slowed right down and you were just like, what is going to happen here? And I think I was texting you going, what is this? This is horrible. I can't even cope. What is happening here? Because and at one point it was particularly beautiful as well. There was a really beautiful shot in a cave system almost.
I loved that.
It reminded me of The Descent.
And if where she's hiding behind a rock, was it that?
She's creeping around it, and anything that reminds me of The Descent is just like a giant tick. It's just a huge tick saying, "Hey, you know that your favorite horror movie? Something's just reminded you of it and not made you sad." So
100%.
I
loved it.
Yeah, I think, that is one of the most surprise hits for me, sitting at, 3 o'clock on a bank holiday Monday afternoon, suddenly going, oh, here's an amazing movie. Like,
I
here's a
know.
great movie.
And I have to admit, I was going into it with a bit of a heavy heart, thinking, oh, this is the honor killing film that they're playing in the middle of a bank holiday Monday. I thought, oh my God, how bleak is this going to be? But it totally blew me away. Loved it. So there you go. So that was Av the Hunt. Massive thumbs up for that one. And actually, again, this is where it became tricky in terms of the clashes. And we were very lucky that we got to see both. But it meant that if you watched Av the Hunt, you would miss Blinders or vice versa. And actually, Blinders, also a very good film, right?
Blinders is ace. Blinders is about a man moves to LA to escape a horrible relationship that's just ended, and he's a bit brokenhearted and he's a bit sad. And he meets a girl in a bar. And for once, LA is friendly, because I think everyone thinks of LA as the worst place on earth.
Yes.
And they get an Uber or a Lyft or whatever it is. They get an Uber to her house afterwards, and the Uber driver is really friendly and lovely. And then he accidentally runs into the Uber driver the next day and organizes to meet him for coffee. And then they start a friendship. And the friendship gets quite intense. And we will stop it there. And I felt this film was so intense, and I think I told you this, that when I was watching it in preview screener form, I had to stop halfway through it and start again the next day, because I found it so intimidating and intense, because it's very human, real, and horrible.
Yeah, it's a horror of it's a horror of social sort of discomfort, isn't it? Which is one of the hardest kinds of horrors to watch. That kind of awkward social interactions with people that are just not okay, and it just builds and builds and builds, and you know what's going to happen. You know that this person is going to ruin another person's life, and it's hard to watch. It's hard to, it's like the classics that you might have got in the 90s, like Single White Male, basically. This film, isn't it? Male. In a lot of ways, and it is really good. It got a little bit silly for me. I don't know how it got. I think it pushed me over the edge slightly in the last 10-15 minutes.
Yes, that's where it pushed. It also pushed me there, and I actually felt, we can't talk about those last 15
We won't
minutes,
talk about that, but it let it down for me a little bit. But until then, it was great. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I was on edge. Looked great. Good production values. It was quite slick. I was a big fan. Good performances too, actually.
Great performances. And another dreamy look at LA, which Blind obviously did, and so did Blinders. They they both have these kind of, I don't know, everyone obviously is just in love with LA because you've got all these palm trees and the hills and the observatory and all of these things. And they both kind of tick that box of this of dreamy world.
Although actually it also does the classic thing that so many of these films do, which is actually the kind of central message of, is LA a lie? Like, is actually totally everyone actually horrible and out for themselves, even if they appear friendly, So it's kind of, it does both, doesn't it?
It does that double-edged sword.
Yeah, it does. But it was great. So there you go. So that was Blinders, also a big thumbs up. We will finish on the Swerve. Why don't we go to Dark Stories quickly first? So the last two films of the day also clashed with Dark Stories and the Swerve. Dark Stories was an interesting one, very confusingly, because we've already talked about Dark Place, which was an anthology. This is Dark Stories, also an anthology. The synopsis, simply put, the UK premiere: what if demons, the living dead, evil dolls, jinn, and other extraterrestrial creatures came to haunt our apartments, houses, cafes, museums, and other places in daily life? So essentially, this is a kind of... It's got a bit of everything, hasn't it, essentially?
It's like a buffet. It's a buffet of horror.
That's the word I was looking for. It is a buffet of horror. It is every kind of creepy dummies, monsters, ghosts, demons. It's got a bit of everything. What did you think of it?
I think, so as is the case with so many of the anthologies that we tend to see at Fright Fest, I thought there was a couple of very good stories and then a couple of fillers.
Yes.
But I do always feel like those really good ones shine all the brighter for having got through the swill, which is a bit like Fright Fest as a whole, really.
Yes.
It's that as a microcosm. So the wrapping of it, which I find is quite funny, is, and I think it's probably in the trailer, is a woman who is sitting in front of a dummy who is keeping her hostage. And I actually found the dummy quite amusing.
Yes, I liked that as well. I like that because it's always important, I think, with an anthology to have a good wraparound story, to
Yes.
have a good framework
Yeah.
story as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. I feel exactly the same as you. There was one in particular that I really, really liked that was creepy, that worked
Yep.
really well. A couple that I thought were kind of fun and a couple that were a bit meh. So
Yeah.
it's the usual anthology thing, isn't it? But I think anyone, it was a really fun film to end the festival with if you chose that one, to be honest. I mean, it was like a good, fun, silly romp, I suppose,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
And there's a really silly but very funny one about a zombie waking up in a morgue. That was one of my
Yes.
favorite. That's really funny. It's
Yeah.
genuinely got that fun body comedy horror going on
Mm-hmm.
where like bits of things are falling off and like fingers are falling off,
Yeah.
and sometimes that can err into like, well, this is just gross, this is just
Yes.
vile. But actually I thought it worked really well and was very funny and very charming, oddly, for
Yeah.
a movie about a man that was just literally falling to bits because
Yeah.
his skin isn't nice. Like, I think it's hard to hit comedy, and I felt like that did that really, really well.
It did actually, and visually, this film was quite cool as well. There was one, I think it might have been the first one, about a kind of monster that comes out of a painting, and
Yes.
the monster looks when it moves like a painting, like it's been
Yeah.
like painted in
Drawn.
watercolors or something, or drawn. And I actually thought visually that really popped. I thought that looked really
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, some really kind of fun touches with that one. So there we go. So that was Dark Stories. Last but not least, then the other final film of the weekend was The Swerve. So The Swerve, starring Azura Sky, who we've mentioned already, but she's appeared in a couple of Buffy episodes, hasn't she, back in the day?
A long time ago, to the
A
point
long
where I
time
was
ago.
looking at her going, I feel really old because I remember when you played Cassie in
Teenage girl.
Buffy in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
like,
now she's playing a middle-aged mum.
yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a horrible thing for us all. It's like, what
Yeah.
was it? Macaulay Culkin tweeted the other day saying, guys, if you want to feel old, I'm 40. And it's
I
just like,
know.
fuck you, Macaulay Culkin. Stop
Awful.
this.
I know. Damn
Um,
you. Damn you.
but yeah.
So this film, wow. I mean, this film, so this is the story. She plays Holly. Holly, a wife, mother, teacher, and daughter whose psychosis starts to crumble after she's part of a deadly car accident. But did that actually happen or not? Just one of many things on her disintegrating mind. So this is, to put it simply, the story of a woman losing her mind, really,
Yeah.
isn't it? Essentially. What did you think of this one?
I mean, I love it. I love it in the way that I absolutely endured it. It felt horrific. It felt beautiful. It felt like the performance that she delivered was astonishing.
Astonishing.
I think in terms of horror, it does that. It is more of a sort of psychological thriller, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I do think you need to be mentally prepared for it. I do not think it's a particularly easy watch in any capacity.
No.
I think when it hits really, really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's spectacular. And I do think it's a very somber finishing movie. Very somber finishing movie.
Just to echo everything you said, I loved it. One of my favorites of the festival. I think it's stunning. The performance is incredible. The story is like devastating. It's a hard watch. It's really bleak. And yeah, I am baffled as to why this was the closing film of the festival. I mean, you kind of think you'd want something a little bit more fun, maybe.
Skull the Mask.
Skull the Mask.
Mask.
Exactly. But actually, also, if they were looking for something that was just pure, maybe of the best quality, then this probably is the best. Totally. I would say maybe this is the best crafted film of the weekend. It's wonderful and hard to watch in a good way, in the way that it's supposed to be hard to watch, I think. And it reminded me of films like Repulsion, movies about female psychology, female hysteria, whatever you want to call it, this woman on the verge of a breakdown. And it was so powerful. And even though it's not classic horror, because you're right, it's more of a drama really more than anything, but I found myself getting more and more tightly wound and more and more tense, just little moments like where she would put her hand under a bed to grab her high heel and you just think, oh my God, what's there? Everything that happened, every mundane thing that happened, I thought something awful was going to happen. There was a feeling of dread throughout, which I love. I mean, I love that feeling when I watch a horror film, so that really worked for me.
I think that feeling of dread is really interesting because what's actually the case is her sons really don't care. They never say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They're really unappreciative. Her husband is horrific, clearly doing terrible things with the woman from work.
Ugh.
Her sister is terrible. Her mother just constantly compares her to her sister and treats her like a child.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the one of those, again, it's like, it's those trappings of womanhood, isn't it? It's that realization that you have between the ages of 30 and 40 of like, what are the expectations for me? What am I doing? Why am I here? And why does nobody seem to give a fuck?
Like, yeah, exactly.
It was very accurate and terrifying in that way as well. I think
that's what it was, wasn't it? Is that the kind of evilness, if you want, of the characters is believable. Like, people like that, and people that would treat a woman like that, and everything felt very real to the point where it was quite uncomfortable. We like our kind of fun genre thrills, don't we? And sometimes when it steps into more social realism, I'm like, oh, I can't handle this. I can't handle this, and it was a bit like that. And it's funny, actually, because, in some way, I mean, it's radically different, but in some ways, in terms of a story about a woman with everyone else against her, it's in some ways quite a good double bill with Av the Hunt, isn't it? It just in a very different way, in this kind of much more Western middle class, almost acceptable way, in a kind of, it's
absolutely that.
Yeah, devastating film.
Yeah.
I literally finished it about half an hour ago, and I was like, Louise, I need a minute before I'm before I'm ready to talk about this. Yeah, bleak, but stunning, really, really stunning. So there you go. So that was the Swerve, and that was the final film of the festival.
It was. That's it done.
We got through them all.
20 odd films.
So we've talked about all of them, but let me just ask you very briefly, if I was to put you on the spot, Louise, and say top 3 of the festival.
Well, okay, so I had The Columnist and Swerve kind of equal billing at my number 1, because I don't care. It's my list. I can put as many as I want at the top. So I have those 2, because The Columnist is more traditional sort of fun comedy horror. Meanwhile, The Swerve is that kind of punch in the chest. So I'm going to put them at equal because I can't compare the 2.
Fair.
But what's your top?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, isn't it? The one I found most enjoyable versus the one that I think maybe is the best. Yes. If I was to be honest, and the one that I actually had the most fun watching, it would probably be Two Heads Creek,
Yes. Yeah.
Which was just so much fun. Like, I was just grinning from beginning to end. So that would maybe be my most enjoyable. But I'm with you. If I was to do a joint, it would be Two Heads Creek and The Swerve, because The Swerve was just, like we said, stunning. It's just not one that I'm easily going to be able to like dip back into again, potentially.
Yeah, I don't think it's not one that I'm hurrying to rewatch, shall we say. Yeah.
Any other favourites you want to mention?
I love 12-Hour Shift. It was a wonderful, fun movie.
So much fun.
It was so much fun. I loved, what else did I love? We've not mentioned A Ghost Waits. And the reason I've not mentioned A Ghost Waits is because it was my Fright Fest February film of the show. So as we know, I absolutely love that movie. So it's not going to sit in my top 3 because it was in my top 3 last time. Yeah, fair. Do you know what? As stupid as it was, I actually had an absolute blast with Triggered as well. Triggered was great. Triggered was really good. We can have our top 5.
Top 5. If I was to go 5, and I don't know about an order, but I would say The Swerve, Two Heads Creek, Triggered, probably The Columnist as well, and what was the other one I just thought of? Oh, and for me, the anthology Dark Place as well would be up there. Those 5 have probably been the highlights for me.
Well, I'm going to throw in
and The Ghost Waits as well.
I'm going to throw in Av the Hunt.
Oh shit, Av the Hunt as well, of course. Yeah. Fuck. Yep. Good.
Yes. All of these things. It was great. It was
some real gems.
I know we had a slight hiccup in our day 2, but everything else has fixed those particular, sadnesses.
Well, do you know what? In some ways, it's been kind of cool that this has felt, even though all of these circumstances are so different, it really has felt like a regular Fright Fest. Because let's be honest, at any Fright Fest, you get some of the greatest horror films you can watch and some of the worst films imaginable. Yeah. And we've had that. We've had a good mix. We just had to sit on our sofa to see them. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Louise, thank you so much. What a joy this has been the last
wonderful.
few days.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. So if people want to come and find you and find more of your work out there in the world, where can they find you?
If they want to hunt me down, I'm on Twitter at shiny_demon. But don't hunt me down like the columnist hunt me down, because we've already had quite enough of that.
Yeah.
But yes, you can see my words on Twitter and probably hear some videos with me on them as well.
Amazing. Louise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Looking for more horror content? Subscribe now for more videos like this one and listen to the Evolution of Horror podcast. Head on over to evolutionofhorror.com.